Thank y'all. I want to thank KASWE for inviting the board here. Before Janessa steps out, I just want to let you know Janessa is on the board, and Mark Kelly here is our executive director. And Mark and I are kind of, as he says, the Holland Notes show, because I'm lead and he's backup. So that's kind of how this works right now. I have to explain the title slide here a little bit, because if you look at the background, what do you see? You remember the creations thing? Well, you've got an artificial hand and a human hand. Artificial intelligence is here. And that's a whole nother topic we're not going to talk about. But it is impacting us as professionals. Down in the corner, you see a little logo. That's what I started doing after I retired from Community Mental Health. Starship Care is my business. And, Starship. A Star Trek fan. Probably know more about that than you want to ever know. But anyway, so I named my business Starship Care. And the tagline is innovation with care. So we innovate with care. Anyway, left it there. I want to give you a little bit about the legislative context. This is about the proposal that the board is making for changes to the social work laws, practice acts, which is basically to kind of clean up some of the stuff that's been in the law to help us move forward into the rest of this 21st century because of technology and other many, many important issues, okay? We proposed the bill last year, and as most of the time, as you all know, if you've ever worked with legislative sessions, a lot of times you have to propose it once and then it has to come back again because everybody has to get used to it first, because if there happens to be something that's just a little bit different, there's always questions, which is always good. And that's kind of, at the legislature, years ago, I worked as kind of the unpaid lobbyist for NASW. I learned that the expression they use on the Hill at Frankfurt is called, "This is how sausage is made." And it's pretty accurate. It's an interesting process that I learned to respect. At first, it was kind of like, God, this is so complicated and so stupid. Why don't they just kind of get, you know? And after a while, you go, well, we're all human beings. We all have different perspectives. And our legislature, to a certain extent, is to always be a citizen legislature. And I learned, wow, that's pretty good, because it respects citizens of the state, not just because you're elected to office. It was kind of really interesting. It gave me a whole different perspective. And if somebody ever told me when I started out as a social worker that I would work as a lobbyist on the Hill, I would say, you're crazy, you're a bedbug, you know. But it was very educational. It very much helped. So this is where we are now. Last year's bill, if you see the acronym HB, it's House Bill. SB is Senate Bill. Last year's bill was called HB 658. When we're proposing new legislation, there is no number until it gets filed with the Legislative Research Commission by a legislator and gets assigned a number. So we have to be really careful, because the proposal this year is a little bit different than last year. Because we learned some things in the process last year to put in it. So that's why we can't use the same number. So that gets confusing, I know, but I want to make sure you know that. It carried forward most of the same framework. And of course, the biggest issue that we talked about this morning, how many were in the session this morning? Actually, if you missed that session, you missed a wonderful, wonderful discussion. We're going to touch a little bit more on that this afternoon, just for the sake of anybody who wasn't able to come in this morning, and everybody that was there this morning, y'all can share what we did. Anyway, that's kind of what we're going to do. What does it do? Okay? We're trying to bring up to date our definitions. Critically, what is the practice of social work? What is it? We want to streamline some of the processes for licensure. We still carry this expression called good moral character in our law. Does anybody know what that means? It's kind of time for it to just die be gone. It still says that the board prepares the exam. We don't know how long ago we stopped preparing the exam because we contracted with ASWB because it got too expensive for the state to keep doing it. I don't know for sure, but I think I might have been one of the last ones to take the state exam before it switched, and that was 30-some years ago. So I don't know. Nobody kept records. We couldn't find anything. Anyway, so we're trying to change that. So it says the board approves the exam. One of the advantages of that is right now we only have one exam that we can approve. But what if another exam comes along? The language would be there to help us. Okay, clarifying telehealth standards. Oh my gosh. Do you realize that Kentucky social work law and the LMFT law and the psychology law was the first laws in Kentucky that incorporated a definition of telehealth? And when was that? Anybody want to guess when that happened?
2012.
No. Earlier.
Oh,
Go
2007.
a little further back.
2002.
2000.
Oh,
Close.
good.
2000. Now, were we doing telehealth in 2000?
Oh no, those old cameras.
Yeah, those old camera things. And we've been doing telephone for how long? Forever. When was telephone included in telehealth? That was recent. Only with COVID did audio get included. How dumb is that? I was always going, when we started doing telehealth, Community Mental Health Center at 4 Rivers in 2006. Okay. How come you couldn't include audio? Come on, give me a break. People were doing great work by the phone, but we couldn't do anything with it. Couldn't call it telehealth. Well, it's as much part of it as video. Come on. So we're trying to clarify those things within our act. Okay. And of course, the big one is compact, right? And if you haven't heard, and you probably don't care, but anyway, I'm chair of that commission as well. So I have a little bit of inside track on how that is going to roll out. That is not easy. One of the first things we have to do with the compact thing is to set up a central database system to know who has the multi-state license and prevent fraud. Somebody from getting a license when they don't need to, because they already are licensed maybe in 2 different names in 2 different states or 3 different states. Complicates things. But again, for the safety of everybody out there. Okay, so we have to do that. And we have to make sure that our licensees, in the meantime, for our board with the compact, we have to make sure our licensees don't get disadvantaged in that process. In other words, we're going to keep we protect the public as our first, set standards. Kind of an under one is we got to look out for our licensees in the economic world, because if we don't, who is going to do that? Nobody else is going to do that. Okay, so we want to make sure it strengthens public oversight when we get into the compact, and we have to start issuing licenses. And we have to be prepared for it. And our language is not quite where we need it. We passed the compact, which was like, great, we were the 5th state to do that. Wonderful, we've achieved that, but guess what? Ooh, wait a minute, it says things that don't match with the other parts of the law. So we got to kind of clean it up. That's kind of why we could just call it cleanup. That's a Hill term. It's a Hill term. The Hill says, if you're just kind of changing things around and kind of cleaning it up, or making things fit, they call it a cleanup bill. So that's what they called last year's bill. That's what they call this one. It's cleanup on their part. We're just kind of dusting the thing. Okay, wait a minute. This needs to be over in this corner. Those kind of things. That's why they call it that. So anyway, 1974. That's the practice of social work. Everybody who's in the session this morning, I told you I would show you this. please read that definition. And you may not, and you may have read this definition. Got some questions. Is that what we're doing in 2025? Kind of, sort of, maybe. But is it? If you had to explain that to your students, where would you start? I don't know. I really don't. And the term that always confuses me is counseling and non-medical psychotherapy. What in the frig is that? Where in the world did that ever come from? I never have found it anywhere as a description. I couldn't find this definition in any of my research as fitting for where they got it. Why did they write it this way? I don't know. I went back and got the original the law that how it was passed and stuff like that. Nothing there that tells me how they came up with this definition. I'm thinking, I'm sure there was, just wish I knew what it was, but it's not there. I just know it doesn't describe us today, does it? It needs to be cleaned up, to put it nicely. And again, you probably have never read the law and never needed to. But this is what the board has to operate on is an old definition. Well, it complicates lots of our processes. Okay. This is what we're suggesting. Is it a little bit better? I mean, just a little bit better? I want to point out one thing there. It says evidence-based practices. What was one of those big hullabaloos in the session this last time under HB 479? Probably don't remember that number. Has anybody heard of the thing called conversion therapy?
Mm-hmm.
If we had this definition, see how it helps us? Exactly. Exactly.
Is that the what?
Yeah. Now you have to look at this one. When it says subsection 3, it means that section. Couldn't take it out, but so yeah.
It's okay, that's
Yeah.
fine. In the 1974, it kind of identifies means of professional activity of helping for remuneration. So
Yeah.
you're thinking about for payment,
Yeah.
but you took that out of this
Yeah.
2026 one. So I'm curious on your rationale.
Do we do pro bono work?
Can be.
We can. As a profession, we kind of have that as a part of what we do, is pro bono. So why do we want remuneration as the only thing that describes the practice?
Just limiting for students as far as acknowledging as a practice of social work. Since they can't identify themselves as social workers, yes, they're not licensed.
Yeah.
It's just acknowledging them that they can practice social work because
Because they don't have
they're
to
not.
charge money. We don't have to get into that. And why should that be under our board as far as money goes? It was probably a compromise statement in there originally. I couldn't get that part. The social work board, the political thing against the social work board was who? Anybody want to guess? You kind of. There was another strong board that existed before us.
Kentucky Psychological.
You got it, Kentucky Psychological
So we
Association.
can't hear when people comment, so
Yeah,
please use the
I'm sorry.
mic
The
so that.
Kentucky Psychological Association, sorry.
Yeah. Their board was already in existence, and we were encroaching upon their territory. because of the clinical part. Not the other part, but the clinical part. So there were some push and shoves, and we ended up with this thing called 200 hours of supervision to become an LCSW. Remember that? It got changed and dropped down to 150 in 2021. Finally. And Dr. Miller made this statement to everybody, and he was absolutely right. There's absolutely no research that says 200 hours is a magical number. There isn't. Why was it in the law? It was a compromise with the psychology board because all the LCSWs who were going to be clinical had to have a PhD supervisor, and they wanted us to have 200 hours, so it got stuck in the law. That's how things work. We still have LCSWs. When we changed it to 200 down to 150, still want to go back to 200. Based on what? The research that I've read on supervision, and we're hoping that ASWB is still working on this, and they are looking to the state of Kentucky. They like our system to show that 250 hours isn't magical either. The research when that reg was changed indicated that after 100 hours of supervision, the return goes down for the student, or the CSW in this case. Isn't that interesting? I don't know. So ASWB is trying to flesh out that, because we're not the only board that faces that issue. Everybody does, because it's looked at in these political times as we're keeping people from doing independent practice, which it could be viewed as a barrier. So we do have to address it. And they got addressed in 21 to move down from 200, because we had matched Ohio, and they had already changed theirs from 200 to 150. So we were kind of the odd one out. Now I think Nebraska still has 800 hours.
800 practice hours or supervision hours?
Supervision hours.
Wow.
Yeah, wow. Yeah, wow. I think they're still at, I think theirs is still that. So anyway, change down. Now, does that help clean up stuff?
Yeah.
And as we were talking about this morning, we got to really know what this is before we go on with the rest of it. It's a critical piece. So the definitions and the structure of the proposal that we're making, we're putting all the definitions in one spot. Okay, so there's a definition of client that got thrown in 24. So we're having to keep it in there. Kentucky's a little weird. We've always had this thing about how long is a client to client. We had a complaint case, apparently I think roughly 2014, that said the administrative law judge says you can't have that in your code. You have to put a limit, and the board chose 5 years. That's how that came about. So law is impacted, okay? Anyway, so we have to, that's still there. So, when you read that, it comes out, it wasn't in the law, it was in our conduct regulation, but it got stuck in the statute, which they didn't ask us what we thought about it, they just stuck it in there. Okay, so it's there. There's a definition about social worker, which helps us in one sense so that we don't have to get into this back and forth of, you can't call yourself a social worker. It kind of specifies that a little bit better to clarify that, so we don't get into that debate anymore. Trying to help with that debate, so it tries to clarify that.
How's it defined?
It's basically if you're licensed in the law, just says if you're licensed, you call yourself a social worker. If you're not licensed, well, you call yourself a social worker, basically.
You can or can't?
You can.
So
We're
if
not,
you're not licensed, you can call yourself a social worker?
we have exemptions in the law already. So it's trying to make sure that we're kind of settling that debate to a certain extent. Now, if you take it from strictly a personal point of view, I'll go, well, you need to be licensed, but that's not the way the law reads.
It doesn't read that you need to have a social work degree?
That's debatable in the law.
So why are we?
For
recommending that?
licensed, we are saying you have to have a degree. But we can't get to that title protection of someone who would be under the exemptions of saying you have to have a social work degree. We would like to get there. If you want to suggest a way to get there, I'm all ears. Because I would like for you to say, if you call yourself a social worker, you have no education as a social worker, you ain't no social worker. Sorry. But
Does that inhibit you from practicing social work?
Use the mic, because we can't hear you. Use the mic so
What?
everybody can hear.
I just think, does that inhibit you from practicing social work, because we just looked at that?
exactly.
So that would then hurt students and their ability.
Well, that's where that's why we're going to looking at the provisional license to help with that issue for the, just a narrow focus right now.
Hey,
For the clinical.
For the clinical, yeah.
can
So you touched a nerve, and hopefully other nerves in the room when you said that we are losing, it sounds like title protection, if I'm hearing this correctly.
Not any different than what we already have.
We've never had title
We've never
protection.
had complete title protection anyway.
Well, it's interesting because we say we have title protection,
Yeah, we have.
but we don't
Totally.
truly have title protection. And I feel like as a profession, this is something that needs to be on the forefront. And I love our governor dearly, but he's still
wrong. Sorry.
when he talks about raises, he's talking about DCBS workers, not social workers. I've not seen a social work raise just because I'm a social worker in the state of Kentucky. But I think that this, as we're working on changing legislation, that's something that we have to have, because as we continue with our promotion of who we are as social workers, educated individuals, we have got to be able to shore that up. And that's what I would like to see included.
Well, if you all can come up with some good wording, we're open to it.
you want to start the meeting?
Yeah, no, I'm serious. I'm dead serious,
Yeah.
because it's an issue that we've faced for years. And we're not satisfied with this, but we got stuck with it last year, and it's kind of like, we have to negotiate with all the citizens. So we're not, but if y'all want to come up with something and propose it for us to include, come on, please. Because it would help us with other people saying, we are social workers and we want this in the law. See what I mean? We can only kind of push so far. Sometimes people think the word's somehow some kind of an omnipotent thing, and we're not.
I just had a point of clarification. So were you saying that if you are not licensed, that you are not a social worker? Or is that the direction that we're headed towards? Or, because I, as someone with just a social work degree, a master's in social work and a JD, I consider myself to be a social worker. I teach social work, and so I just wanted some clarification.
The way it's written right now, you can call yourself a social worker. That's the way it's always been written. We had some title protection, but not complete like you want. Now, other states do have it.
But what it means is you can call yourself a social worker if you have a psychology degree and you think that you do social work.
And that's what we want to stop.
Yes.
Yes. I don't argue with you because,
Yeah.
you don't get no argument from me. I'm sorry, you don't. Because, but again, we haven't been there. The law hasn't ever gotten that far. And if y'all want to come up with something to help us do that, I'm over.
See me
I'm
after.
trying to think about this because title protection is essential. It's a must for us. So I'm wondering if we can go in the direction of people have to have the degree, but you're either calling yourself a licensed social worker or an unlicensed social worker, and that be the difference. But doesn't allow another discipline in.
I would welcome that. It's a nerve, and I'll guarantee you, we're not the only group that has that nerve. But you won't get any argument from the board. We would love to write it in there. We tried to last year, we didn't get very far. But if it comes from other groups, that can help us.
Where,
Yes.
As someone with a history, so previously I was a lobbyist with the ACLU of Kentucky. So when you're saying that there was, man, I just forgot what, you said there was like a roadblock you wanted to include, so where was that? Was it with legislators, was it with the other social workers? Okay,
Who was asked?
Other social workers.
okay, and yeah, degree, people who call themselves social workers but have other degrees, or with people with, okay, both, okay. So I think better like education, and that falls on us to better educate folks. Okay, perfect, thank you.
Thank you, and Kevin, I've been so tempted to interrupt the governor and go, no, they're not social workers.
But yes, I'm okay.
God, I can hold my tongue sometimes, you know. Because it's like, you know, all due respect, they're not. Tuesday, I got a chance to speak with one of the UK classes on, basically it was kind of like more like AI ethics, but at the same time I got to include, they asked some questions about licensure. And I said, you know, and about what we're talking about. And I said, well, the group that I think is unsung is the people who do work for like DCBS, who are licensed.
Right.
There are a few.
Yeah.
And I said, I applaud them because they are totally exempt in our law. If they choose on their own to step up and say, I'm a social worker, I was educated as a social worker, I'm accountable to the citizens of this state for my job in child welfare. I applaud them wholeheartedly. And we get complaints on them, and I don't think any of them we've ever been able to sustain because they've always done their job.
I don't want to continue to beat this, but so it's a myth because we've been saying that in Kentucky, the law says you cannot call yourself a social worker unless you're licensed. So that was a myth?
No, that part is true.
Yes.
That part is not. If you were licensed, you call yourself a social worker, you're fine.
No, but I understood that if you didn't have a license, you could not use the term social worker.
Yeah, that part is.
There was nothing to protect from that.
So that myth has been going around for a long time.
Yep.
Okay.
And lots of people have perpetuated it because they don't want to be licensed and they want to fall under the exemptions. I've been dealing with this exemption thing for, 30 years or more because we had the
We
same.
recently on the applications committee had someone who thought they had an equivalent degree to a social work degree, and because I'm on the application committee, and we had said at one time, no, you don't, it's not equivalent. And they weren't happy with that and sent it back and said, but it is, and here's the reason why it is. And I'm like, but it's not.
It's not.
And here's the reason why it's not. And it was like some sort of human services something degree.
Yeah.
And they were trying to draw the equivalence, and it just wasn't equivalent at all. And so for the second time, the application committee said no, and this person was saying, but I practice social work. No, you don't.
You don't.
You practice as a human service professional, right? But it was a whole thing that they think that because the degree is similar, that it's okay. And I think some of that may come from the fact that we allow state workers with a related degree to work, and for whatever reason, even the people within the state call them social workers, and they're not. They are social service workers. If they are a social worker, their title says social worker 1, and then you pretty much know, or 2, or whatever, clinical, you know they're a social worker then.
Believe it or not, we have an attorney for the board. Mark's been with us how long now? 3 years, 2 years? Mark Bringelman is our contracting attorney. We have to contract for attorney for legal services. He's been with the psychology board, the dentistry. He's got a lot of board experience. He did not know this difference. And he's been an attorney for 20 some years. We had to educate him at the board level to say no. And I couldn't agree with him. When he first talked, he goes, I've been doing this wrong for. I go, yep, you've been doing it wrong for. No.
Hank, is this the part that you're talking about and I just want to read this. This is straight from the statutes. it says KRS 335 .030 prohibits unlicensed social work practice and using social work titles except as those authorized by law. And then it goes on and says the the LSW, CSW, and LCSW, and establishes what that looks like in each section after that. And it says, if they look like this and they have the license and they're engaging in the practice of social work, then they can use the abbreviation LSW. And then it gives the next one for CSW. So while it says that the law says that we prohibit it, but it does have that little caveat in there that says, except as authorized by law, so the exceptions.
The exceptions, which is BCBS, people in government, and nonprofits.
Nonprofits.
And the only problem is if you're nonprofit, if you're doing clinical social work, then you have to be licensed.
Right, yeah.
And that used to be, when I first got into this, exemptions was across the board for nonprofits, even for clinical work. We finally got that in, 2014, 2012, something like that. It took that long. So I mean, it's not been an easy kind of thing. So you guys, like I said, you get no argument for the board if we want to do title protection. There's plenty of other states who do have it, and I think we need it, but boy, we're in for it, and we need all the support we can get to get it in there. You know, I don't know if we can get it this time, but anyway. Does that help with that? Because I didn't know for sure how much y'all want to talk about that piece, because it's really key and it's an important piece, but those are the realities of what we're at, and you know, so please, we want and we still need to educate the governor all the way down, judges, etc., just because they work for. Do y'all remember the guardianship law?
Yes.
In the guardianship law, it says there are 3 disciplines that have to be part of that. What are they? Medical, psychology, and social work. And the way the social work piece in there, I worked on years ago, because it wasn't clear that you had to have a degree. And that's in there now. Inch. Because, and cabinet was, boy, talk about the cabinet. Oh, can't have that. Blah, 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 blah. I was going for the licensure part too, but they got kicked out. But anyway, but at least the educated, they have to have an educated social worker to qualify under that law for guardianship, not just somebody who has another degree.
Am I imagining things, but didn't you used to be able to participate in like the DCS training courses and then be able to sit for your LSW, not your LCSW, but your LSW?
Without a bachelor's.
Yeah, a long time ago you could.
But that's not the case
No,
now.
you can't do that now. We still have what Janessa was referring to as the equivalency reg that came out of that, but it's pretty strict and keeps us from accepting human services.
But there
degree.
is a way to do it. With
The equivalency standard we had to have out of that debate,
Okay.
but it's pretty,
It is so
It's
specific
so
and aligned
specific.
with CSWE,
Yeah.
like those,
and
you
we
remember those
ain't,
old content?
and we ain't changing
It
it.
is so much aligned with that, even like down to like a practicum in a social service agency and things. And there's, I mean, you would have to be from a social work
Yeah.
program
Yeah.
to get it.
But would that hinder us moving forward with trying to get full licensure protection?
No,
No.
Okay.
not at all.
I mean,
Not at all.
full title protection.
No, not
No,
at all,
I
not
wouldn't
at all,
think so.
not at all.
I mean, it's almost impossible to get it
Yeah.
the way it's written.
Yeah, so.
I mean, I'm sure there's a way, but I can't possibly see how anybody who didn't have a social work degree
Yeah.
could get the license.
Yeah, in fact, that regulation is up for, we
It's
have to
pretty
renew,
tight.
we have to renew the regs every 7 years, and that reg is up for renewal next, and we've already taken the first look at it, and everybody go, keep it. We ain't changing it, you know? And we, you know, as Janessa said, with the examples of people applying and wanting to use that to get a license, and we go, nope.
And it really is frustrating because lots of times they go into a program and they're told, well, this is the equivalent
Yeah.
of a social work program and you're gonna be fine. You'll be able to be a social worker.
Yeah.
And they're not really, but they may be teaching them similar things. I mean, their curriculum may even almost be identical, right? But they can't They just can't do it because it never matches up perfect.
Well, they're not accredited.
No.
That's the end of that
thing.
Accredited.
You have to have an
Yeah.
accredited degree, right?
Yeah, they're not accredited. So, here's a new definition. This is the only new definition. Other than the others are kind of a cleanup, but this is a brand new definition. What's this going for? Not telehealth.
Online teaching?
No.
AI.
AI. AI. Because we have zero standards for AI. And it ain't going away, folks. You know that. So we will have to incorporate it in our code of conduct to make sure people get informed consent, blah, 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 all those kind of things to spell that out so that they can't go, well, I can use this and know the dangers of it and the risk of it. Do y'all know that y'all have seen the new term AI psychosis? Have you seen that? Yeah, it's real. Anyway, that's the definitions. Okay, a little bit about telehealth. I'm gonna probably run out of time here, so sorry. Or just check the time. The telehealth law landscape. Okay, when our law was written,
Yeah.
where was the client, where was the practitioner, or where was the social worker? We're all in the same state, right? Okay. Is that true anymore? No. Is it ever going to be that way again? No. That's why we have to clean up that part of it so that everybody knows, okay, and that we have to look at this because clients can be in any state. And if you do groups or families, you can do multiple states. And now we got out of the country. That's why we have this compact. So the ultimate question is, where is the practice taking place? Whether you're a caseworker or a clinician, doesn't matter. Where's your client? Where are you? Carmen?
In Illinois and Ohio, to do telehealth, you have to be licensed in the state that the client is in. So if they're in Virginia and you're not licensed clinically in Virginia and they're physically there, from what our Illinois, you can't do telehealth. But if they're in your state.
Right. If they're interstate, and the same thing is true, if I'm in West Virginia and I'm not licensed in West Virginia, I can't do, or this is the way the compact reads, telehealth back to Kentucky, just because I'm a licensed Kentucky, because I'm physically not in that state. New questions, but it becomes important. Now the compact is, we all have a driver's license, right? Did you know that Tennessee is not part of the compact for licensure, for driver's license? Georgia's not. There's like 5 states not part of that compact. So how does that work? I drive in Tennessee. If I get a speeding ticket in Tennessee, can I say, well, I'm not licensed here, so I ain't paying that? Does that work? No, it don't work out too well, does it? That's kind of the basics of licensure. If you're in the state, you're subject to those laws, which is, for safety reasons, a good thing, right? Because I think about mandatory reporting. Whoa. Duty to warn? Whoa. If you don't know where your client is and you don't know where you are, all the laws aren't the same. Whoa. Question for us. So we have to be clear about that because of safety issues, because we deal with them. We didn't try to make it up. Why do we have this complexity? why do we have this complexity with licensure in the first place? Does anybody know? Want to take a guess? I'll ask our attorney friend. I bet you know.
Sorry, I missed the question.
I know you were playing on your little machine here, but it's fine. That's okay. I like to play on my machine too. Why do you have licensure complex between the states?
So people don't have to take the license in all 50 states for convenience, for money saving purposes.
Maybe, but, a little bit of that. But the compact helps us with that, right? Compact helps us because if we have a license in Kentucky, then I don't have to have a license in Illinois because I have the multi-state license. Helps me, helps the client. But why did all the states have different, why don't we just have one national license? Yeah, different laws in different states. The 10th Amendment of the Constitution said any of the powers not given to the federal government are reserved to the states. Driver's license, one of the basic ones that started. So all licensing was left in all the jurisdictions is to that jurisdiction alone. Real simple.
Which is why we see so much variation in the
Yes.
states, and why some states have some levels and not others, and
Right.
that sort of thing. I mean, even in, and I didn't know this until I went to the ASWB board member training, learning that our brothers and sisters in Canada
Yeah.
don't have to have a license to practice, they register. But there is no real regulation of that other than they register to say,
And they
I'm a social worker.
Yeah, and they call
And that's
their
it,
boards.
that's all they have to do.
And they
They
call
don't take
their,
an exam, they don't prove competency or anything like that. It's just if they graduate from a program
yeah,
that says they have a social work degree, then they are a social worker and they register and that's the end of it.
yeah, and they call their boards a college.
Yes, they do. Which is so confusing when you're trying
And they're
to
intrigued
listen
by
to
our
everybody
system.
talk.
They're intrigued by our system.
Oh, yeah, they're fascinated by it.
Yeah.
Really struggle to understand taking an exam for a license to prove that you're competent. They really struggle with it.
One thing, if you work for the federal government, I thought this ended up helping me because I married an Air Force guy.
Going with this.
You as long as you have a clinical license, you can work anywhere in the Air Force, on any base, do treatment,
Even
they don't-
international.
even international Germany. It doesn't matter what state it's from. So there's some law covering it, I think.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. That's the federal system, which helped, and the federal system is the one that's pushing. We got the grant through DOD to do the social contract to help military families because it only applies to the military person, not to their family.
Yeah.
So we've come a long way. Got a long way to go, but we got things to work out on. But yeah, you have to be licensed in one state. And that's it, which is like, whew, that was a model for the compacts, really. So it helps us, it really does. Okay, what stays the same? Pretty much everything else. Yeah, doesn't change the core stuff, all that stays the same, okay? And Janessa quoted this, KRS 335030, that's the kook is the conflict that creates the problem for the students that we talked about this morning. Okay? It just does, and we gotta solve it. That's why we said we need you guys' help. We wanna solve it, we wanna do that, and work with you to get it solved. So we don't hurt students, we don't do anything. We help things move along. We want to be in partnership with you guys on this because that's what it says. She read that. We talked about these exemption model and stuff like that. We've got to have a legal basis. The board has to have that. We want to coordinate with with EPOS, okay, for the specialist programs, okay. It works. It's because our profession is different than psychology or whatever. We have to account for those differences, and that's good to me. Okay? This is what students tell us. I just want to graduate. I mean, It's pretty basic. I mean, they don't care about all these intricacies. They really don't. We don't need to go into depth with them. They just want to graduate. And we want to help them graduate. We don't, the board does not want to hurt a student. I mean, we don't want to sanction a student. We don't want to fine them. We don't want to do anything like that. We want to help them learn and get going, and you guys help them learn and get going and move on.
One of the things that we didn't touch about this morning in this morning's session was the cost. I know that it's all in May, but have you all determined what that dollar amount is going to look like?
Maybe
And
$5.
how much?
$5.
Five.
Just $5.
$5.
Okay, and then how are you all in the board going to ensure that there is not a time delay for these students to get into the practicums waiting on the provisional license?
We have a new software system.
Tell them about it, Mark.
Yeah, tell them about Mark and tell you about, we're going live October 6th with our brand new online system. And it's pretty slick.
Yeah, we have streamlined the whole system. We've dumped the old system, we're using the new system. We've been testing it a lot. Plus, we streamlined a lot of the processes within the office to speed things up.
So then the suggested continued, like in the way it's currently written, it says that there are Q 8-week supervision journals. Is that gonna stay? Is that not gonna stay?
That's gonna be up to our work group.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I like it.
I do wanna add this. Mark, how long has it taken right now for any application to be processed?
2 weeks.
Yeah. So that's kind of been what it takes for us now. We've talked about this, we wouldn't anticipate it taking any longer than that for the students either.
And then is
Right.
the background check still gonna be required?
That's up to you.
That'll be up to the schools too.
Okay.
So really, we would have to give the red light, or the green light, not the red light, the green light for the student to be able to go and get this provisional license.
Okay.
Yeah, if that makes sense.
This provisional license, the policy is written so it would only be MSW students in their final year that could do this.
Yeah, that's what we're going with, yeah.
And it's voluntary.
Yeah, in other words, if they're gonna be in a clinical setting and this is our thought. If you as, the student comes to you and says they got this practical placement and they wanna do clinical work, then you can say, well, you're gonna have to get this provisional license through the board and we will approve you for that, but you may have a reason not to approve for that placement. You may have another reason that we don't know about and we don't really care. Not that we don't care, it's just that would be your purview. They would be applying, it's kind of like if you're gonna work with our exemptions, this would work, let me back up. Is that they would be, the agency would want them to do clinical work. In other words, they would be saying, we want them to do, we want them to carry, let's just put it practically, we want them to have a caseload. Don't talk about billing, just we want them to have a caseload to get the experience of interacting with real
Right,
clients.
Right.
And you as a school go, yeah, I think that's right for this student.
Okay, so a lot of us that have advanced standing programs have students that come to us and start their advanced practicum at the minute that they start our programs. They are coming with a degree from a BSW degree from another university. We don't know these students.
Yeah, right. That's
So
Yeah.
it's incumbent upon the university to do a background check to determine that whether this student is appropriate.
Yeah,
What's
we're
your
looking for a
process
recommendation.
for it
We're looking
now?
for a recommendation from you.
What's your process
We
for it
don't
now?
give our students licenses.
Right, but I mean, what's your process for putting them in field now?
Yeah,
They would go into field, but I'm not saying that they're qualified to have a provisional license.
and if you don't.
We're not asking you to qualify that. We're asking you to say that they've met all the requirements educationally for you to put them in field. And then that would allow them to get the license. So if you don't require a background check to go into field education, we won't require it to get the license.
And
But if
we're-
you do require the background check, then
So-
they've got to go through that
And this
process.
is-
It's
but-
up
this is
to you as
something
the
too-
school.
This is something.
But
to the
for a
board.
regular person to get a license, you have to have a background check, is that correct?
But this isn't a regular license, right? This is not a regular license.
Right, and for a regular license right now, we don't require it.
Okay.
We don't do a background
The
check
ma-
anymore. I don't think
the-
so.
The
We don't do a
multi-state
background
license
check.
will,
Right.
and not the regular license in Kentucky.
We've never done,
We've
and
not done it.
we've not done it, but it's not a regular license either. Like, it's not,
So what does this license give students?
It gives them a legal pathway to have a caseload.
to not be breaking the law.
And protection from the board.
Yeah, protection from us. Yeah.
I will say, we met with Field Consortium this morning, and one of the things, lots of great things came out of it, lots of good discussion. We didn't solve anything, but lots of good discussion, lots of perspectives shared. And I think really the best thing that came out of it was that, like, nobody's like saying, no, this is awful, this is terrible, you all suck, which is great. Thank you all for not saying that. But the other thing, well, it's true, they could have. But the other thing of that was, I think that we kind of decided that in order to make sure that the transparency is there, because that's what we want, and the collaborative spirit is there. And I mentioned this to Tony a little bit later. Hank and I talked, and we're like, we think the work group is the way to go, because we kind of tossed that around. So I think, and if Hank's okay, I'm going to go ahead and say that we would like to see the Field Consortium pull out 3-4 people. We can't take everybody, right? Because you just get, so many chefs in the kitchen, the recipe falls apart, right? But we would like to have a representation of field folks to work with some of the board members and create that language. That way it meets everyone's needs. Now, we may not all get what we want. We talked about that. It may not all be everything, but at least everybody's voice is heard. We've worked collaboratively, and it's the social work way. If we're not collaborating, we're not doing social work. And if we're not setting that example for our students, then shame on us.
And we want to make sure that group would address your question. What's, between advanced standing and whatever.
Right.
You're more familiar with it than I am.
Right.
That's why I want you to help write that language. Okay?
And I'm not sure that anybody on the board is a field person.
Yeah.
So it would make so much more sense for us to have the field people consult us and be like, no, you all got it all wrong. That's not going to work. And let me tell you why it won't.
One of the things is like with the work group, it's kind of like, y'all came up with something we kind of like give it to the rest of the field, and they can go shoot it full of holes, or say, hey, you're on the right track.
I just want y'all to really think about whether or not you want to be part of this work group, though.
Yeah, right, yeah.
Just know what you're getting into.
No, I appreciate that. Collaboration is as important as we know is in our code of ethics. So I do have a clarification question, because with CSW, they do utilize a competency-based model. So with that, what that entails is not just having the knowledge in your head, but actually integrating classroom learning to practice through actual practice. And so that's why I kind of asked the clarification question surrounding the new definition of practice, because they're not for all students. And now, the EPOS 2022 allows for the employment-based, and so with that, students can get field hours for their paid work. But the way the practice definition states now is that the practice of social work involves, which the word I cannot say, payment, and so I guess my clarification question is, because in the proposal, as it's listed now, it identifies that it's for those that have already completed one practicum placement in their final year, and you're looking at, kind of acknowledge BSW, MSW, DSW, and I think potentially PhD in it, but what you have identified is that it's looking more at the clinical. But with that, what does that mean? Because I work with BSW students. What does that look like for my BSW students relative to the competency-based model? Because then they can't practice, is what I'm hearing you saying. So that's non-compliance.
Well, at this point, we're not going there yet.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
So
So I
you're
just
safe.
wanted.
You're
Yeah.
safe.
Yeah. I just wanted to.
So I will tell you that I am of the camp, I am a fan of adding this provisional license, at least on BSW and MSW. I don't know about
That's not
BSW
where
and
we're at.
PhD, but I am a fan of it because I think personally, and y'all, like I said this morning, don't throw rotten fruit at me or anything, but I think it helps to elevate
It does.
the profession. I think it brings a legitimacy to what we do. I think it sends a message to our sister professions that we're better than you. Well, no, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. No, I'm kidding. But but that we understand that what our students do truly is kind of life and death, and they are making an impact and making a difference, and we feel like that should be acknowledged. I'm a fan of it. Now, we're not there yet because we're just not, but I'm a fan of it. I think it would be a great thing for us to offer it for our undergraduate students because I think it elevates the entire profession when we do that.
Well, that's my question is, and for if we have the provisional license, does that mean that my BSW students can't practice in their practicum because they don't have?
No, they're going to be doing generalist work, right? Yeah, no, they'll be doing generalist work.
Okay, so this is more just.
Yeah, it's a whole different problem if they're doing clinical work at that time, like mental health clinical work.
Okay,
Right.
because the way it's confusing in the wording of the proposal.
Yeah, we talked about that this morning, like the word clinical, we think that it might be better, or some iteration of like clinical mental health or something like that, so that it makes that distinction, because clinical could be in a hospital at a bedside instead of in a mental health treatment setting. Does that make sense?
Yes, I just want to make sure that my students can still practice.
They totally can.
And they're advocates. Okay, thank you.
So not to lay on another layer of all this, but with the billing, you know, if it's licensed and they could bill, and I know there's some legislation that was supposed to come down but didn't end up coming down, and that's always still on the horizon with different Medicaid billing practices and that sort of thing that students could potentially fall into with this licensure. I feel like, and this is more of a statement than really than a question, but I think it's on us as universities to make sure that our practicum policies will also shadow that, to make sure that our students are not overworked and underpaid if they are starting to be eligible for billing. And so I think that we talked about this some in the ad hoc committee that happened in 2024 about this, but a limit on caseloads for those students, because as we know, free labor, right? And they'll just, or a minimal cost to labor. I mean, agencies, especially community mental health, are probably going to eat that up. So I think that it's really going to behoove us as universities to challenge our, not challenge, but to review our policies and procedures to make sure students aren't put in that situation.
Thank you, Catherine, because it's critical. Yeah, it is. So, y'all know this evolution, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Well, we don't even know what's coming in 2027, do we?
No.
But we can guess. My guess is going to be a little bit more than what the 22 was over the 2015. Because if you look at the sequence, and thank y'all, because I'd never read this stuff. I had a chance to read this stuff.
No, it is too much.
I didn't know anything else. I had to go back and research this part to figure out a little bit of where you guys are at. See, that's what I mean. We want to make sure that we align things. We don't want to jump into this without aligning so that we're not in conflict. You know, that's the whole goal of this. And so that's why the work group is what's going to be a critical piece of this. You know, so but anyway. This became the inflection point, I think. I think it's why we anticipate and keep getting these things about students and stuff anecdotally, and people, when they ask anecdotal questions, they're talking about something real, right? Oh, hypothetically, if, I love those questions because I know what they're talking about. And I understand more going through this as to why they were doing these hypotheticals and stuff, because, well, I've got to write this stuff up, you know. So, you know, before then, it probably was easier, but the 2022 to me was the one that really kind of kicks us in that tension that wasn't there before. I don't know. Maybe that's what triggered the complaints that wasn't to the board before. But because they are, I don't know, it's just a pure guess, okay? When they come to us, then it puts us in that bind. That's why we need your help, because we got to figure this out. And I think we can do that. You know, based on what y'all talked about this morning, I'm convinced of it, that we can work this out. We can figure this out. You know, just came the trigger point. We got to figure out this. And if we can put the title protection in here,
We're working on that.
oh yeah,
That's a different work group.
yeah, it's a whole nother work group, but you know, anyway, this is actually the way the law would be worded. And I want to comment on this one. This is not what we wrote and sent to the license LRC last year. This is what I think Janessa referred to it this morning. is it came back written like this.
Yeah.
Okay? When you send language to the LRC, they draft things for the legislator. One of the things that you do, or one of the things you don't do, is try to change the LRC's mind. Okay? It will not work. When they lock into a language, you're stuck with it. So I tried to, and I couldn't, they go, nope. Like Janessa said this one, you licensed on all those levels, you're gonna have to write it in there.
But we don't.
We don't
No,
I
we
know.
license bachelor's level social work.
We don't doctorate degrees.
I know.
Well,
but they-
actually, the law does say
Yes.
to get
You can-
the CSW, you have to have a master's or a
Or
doctorate.
doctorate in the CSW.
This way it reads, yeah. I
So-
mean, we don't doctorate, right?
Yeah.
But the law reads
The law reads.
masters or doctorate.
Or master's or doctorate.
Yeah.
Anyway, sorry. We're not, super happy with it, but hey, we have to live with it, And to a certain extent, LRC's perspective is correct. Like Janessa was bringing up about when we talked earlier about BSW level, okay? We wouldn't have to go back and change the law because it would already be there and authorize us to do something on the bachelor's level. So from that perspective, it's right. When you write law, one of the things that they have to look at is, we don't want to be changing this every year. Will it last for the next 3 or 4 years at least? That's kind of their perspective. Not always, kind of always goes back to the legislator, but at the same time, this is what came out.
What would a bachelor's degree practicum student be doing that would require a license?
It would not right now. What Janessa's talking about is, and I'll give you a practical example. And I've had BSWs who are, I would like to see them have a certificate or something that says, I had a couple of BSWs, they were really good call takers on the crisis line. They were really good. They didn't have any recognition for it. And I thought, man, I wish there was some way to let them know or let the public know these two people are better than this person because they got this certificate. See what I mean?
But that's not a license to practice.
But it's similar. The certificate is similar. So it's just that kind of idea that it would be that piece. Does that make sense?
I thought a provisional license was to allow them to have a legal caseload of clinical patients and to have protection from the board. So what would a BSW level student ever be doing that they would need legal protection from the board and to carry a legal caseload?
I don't know.
We didn't think this would happen yet either.
Right.
I mean, I think that's part of it is we didn't ever think that we would have
For
this sort of situation that we would need to address it clinically, which is why I think the LRC adds all those layers, because if it's a may, then we don't have to go back and change the law again. But I don't know that they would be doing anything, but
I don't
it's
know
just
either.
that we didn't expect this to happen
Yeah.
either.
Yeah.
The language in the law, regardless if you look at it, it's old, it's not been changed since 74.
Yeah.
I mean, it's probably older than a lot of us in this room, right? So,
I think I'm out of time, so I can give you the PowerPoint for the rest of this. Slides. I do want to.
Can you go back to that one real quick?
Oh, okay.
That
This
one?
one?
Yep,
Okay.
thank you.
It's the tension, and we all need to be, start decisions. That's what we said this morning. It's a systems problem. We need to look at and to resolve it. Kind of equity. I don't want people choosing to go to another career like counseling or psychology because they don't want to go through the rigor of going through an MSW program. I want them to choose social work. I don't want them going over there and saying, oh, you know, this is easier, this is quicker, you know.
Hey, can you
Yeah.
go back to that?
Yeah.
So remember this morning I asked about supervision, if it had to be a supervisor approved by the board?
This
So
is
that-
all part of the work
Wait,
group.
use your mic.
Use mic.
So this morning I attended the consortium meeting, and one of the questions that I had with the conversation was if the supervision had to be provided by an LCSW that has been approved to provide supervision like they are now for CSWs, not just having an LCSW. Like for example, myself, I have LCSW, I have not taken the supervision. Well, I have, but I haven't put through the paperwork. I don't supervise anybody, right? So technically, my question is, would I be able to supervise a student hypothetically without that approval from the board to be a supervisor of a CSW? And so that language here under supervision reflects that, but you all said this morning that wouldn't be the case, that anybody with an LCSW could supervise.
Well, all of this is in the work group.
Okay.
Everything we discussed this morning would be in the work group. This is just some pull-out stuff that we've talked about, just all kinds of ideas. So it's nothing set in stone on that part of it.
So that may be changed.
Yeah, oh yeah, yeah.
So will you go back for one more thing? So another question for the, one before that. It says must have completed one prior practicum with satisfactory. Is the evaluation going to be at the university level or at the board level?
Right now, we're thinking it's at the university level.
So we will qualify a student for a provisional license?
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah, I mean, that's our thought. I don't know. Again, work group stuff.
okay, that's a
That's
question,
work
right?
group stuff. This is all work group stuff.
Okay.
Several of these, but you know, kind of the challenge is to make sure we're on the same page, okay? We don't need to be arguing and fighting each other over stuff and helping our students. Main thing is to help our students and give them clear direction so that, you know, agencies can't demand of your student what you don't want them to do because they have to answer to us. Those kind of things, helping to satisfy all of that. Alignment with, you know, and be prepared in alignment for this 2027 EPOS that's going to hit you guys, you know, in a couple of years. I don't know what's going to be in there, but if we can work on it now, we can kind of be ready for all of that so that we're answering that, okay? You know, we're in a two-step process. We have to have the building permit before we can do the building. The authorization from the legislature is the building permit, okay?
Hey, can I add something really quick? I just want to, y'all can hear me, right? I just want to add that, I don't know how many of you have online programs, but our MSW program is online. And it's important for you to note that that license will only be required for those that are going to be practicing or doing their practicum in Kentucky. If they're going to be doing it in I don't know, Idaho,
Yeah.
they don't have to have that provisional license. It's just because we're not going to be able to do anything with them if something were to happen anyway. That would be Idaho that would be
That's
taking care of
Idaho's
them.
problem.
So only if they're practicing or doing that practicum in Kentucky. Doesn't matter where they are. Like if they're from Tennessee and they're driving over the state line to do their practicum, then they need the provisional license. If they're staying in Tennessee to do it, they don't have to have the provisional license. It's just for those who's going to be doing a practicum in Kentucky.
These are the basics that we, you know, for the, we have FAQs. So if you want to do this QR, we'll be updating those, probably based on some of your questions from this morning. We'll be updating that document to help answer and educate and all that kind of good stuff. And when the draft of the legislation is on the website, okay? As it changes, and it probably will, we'll update that. So, you know, go back to that. It's right on the homepage and pull it down, look at it. Always ask questions. Of course, my sidekick over here, email Mark Kelly, mark.kelly@kentucky.gov. So this is where we are. We need your help to get through the door and move on to the future. And I wish the board had been more cooperative in the past. Sorry they weren't. We as board members don't like it. We have to own our past. That's where we are. We want to build better trust. We want to build better transparency with the processes and explain what we're up against each time to you guys, because you're not in our jobs. We're not in yours, but we have to have this dialogue and to help with this. And again, all of this is mainly to help we have a future profession. We've got to work together to have a future profession because we are under so many pressures at the same time. This is one of them. And I think we can do it. I've always been impressed with educators and the social workers in Kentucky. Janessa, you know, we go to other states because of ASWB and stuff. It's amazing. You go, y'all do that? And we go, we have people that a lot smarter than that. They can do it. So we think we ought, you know. All right, we already did the question and answer, so anyway. Sure, I'm out of time. I'm sorry. I mean, if y'all have to say, okay.
You have 10 minutes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Can I ask?
Sure.
And maybe the onus is on the student that's practicing in the state of Kentucky from out of state, but are you all making any efforts to educate the universities that may be on the border or that may be doing, like how are you getting the word out to students who may be engaging in an online platform for an MSW program out of state, but they're doing their practicum in state?
We don't know yet, Catherine. Okay, sorry.
We have talked about that.
You
and the
haven't-
whole
I know you're not
educational
there
bits,
yet.
But we would have to have all the regs and things figured out before we could do that.
Yeah.
Otherwise, we would just be going and like putting all people up in arms and be
No,
like,
I
what
don't
are you
mean
gonna do?
I don't mean now, but if this moves forward,
Oh, yeah.
what,
That's
is
what
there
we
a
would have to
plan?
We've talked about an educational program. We've talked about
Yeah.
all kinds of different ways to do it, like printed materials,
Yeah.
videos. Like
Videos.
we've talked about all kinds of things.
We've
I
even
just
talked
don't know
about
what it
doing a
looked like yet.
TikTok channel.
That's a good idea.
We finally got the YouTube channel working.
There will be something, yeah.
We're working on doing that kind of stuff. Helping. The board has never done technology before. Or Mark, it's dealing with on tables and that stuff. But we're having to move it, and it's like it's working, but we have to work within the state COT, all that stuff. So sometimes it's slower than what you would expect out in. You know, I can do things in my business that I can't do at the board because of the difference in the technology. It's just the way it is, and you know, so we have to work with that. But and I really, really appreciate y'all coming and listening. We wanted to do this, and this was one of our first efforts, Catherine, when you invited us here, is to be able, because it starts here with you guys. And I've been real, so I don't know of any time KASWE was invited to participate with the board. I have never heard of it. I really haven't. And when the board, we go, we need to talk to you guys. That's our first key step. In other words, this is kind of like talking to you guys and get things, that gives us more ideas and more things to build on to go forward to do something. So that we don't operate 7 people sitting in a room trying to figure out something for the state ain't the best practice. Maybe it worked when it started in 1974. It ain't working now and shouldn't work that way. That's me. I just don't think it should work that way. And board members don't agree with that. They go, no, we need to dialogue. We need to open this up. We don't need to be operating in a silo because it affects the profession. I'll share with you one last thought. When I was at the MSW program in UK, there was this course called the Senior Practicum. It's a 2-hour required course, and you either were in the cohort with the dean or the associate dean. You remember that? I do. Okay. Okay. And it was one of those things when I started, everybody goes, oh, that's a bore. You won't like that. Well, actually, I ended up with the associate dean. And you know where he started the class? He started it with the Code of Conduct from the United Nations. We had to read that thing. I had never read it in my life. I didn't know what it was. And then he built up to the Code of Conduct and all that through. I go, wow, this was really nice. And he left me, the class, with this, I don't know if he did it in our class, but our class, he left us with this image. And I've never forgotten. And he said, the profession, if we're going to exist, he said, you guys are I'm gonna be dead and gone. Yeah, is a three-legged stool. He said, there's the educators, there's the professional organizations, and there's the regulatory board. And he said, if you keep those strong, you'll survive as a profession. If you don't, you won't. And that image had never left me because I'm thinking, at first after a while, man, he was right. And that's why I got involved with the Professional Associates in ASW. You know, because that was one of the legs. Yeah. And then, you know, somebody talked me into signing up for the board. I'm thinking, you probably don't want to do that. But, you know, I actually applied because I just wanted to get them off my back. You know, I go, I'm from Mayfield, Kentucky, you know, way down on the other end. The governor doesn't know me from Adam, and nobody's going to call me. So I could say, yeah, I put the application in so you don't have to bug me anymore. And then the call came from the governor's office. And I go, oops, now I got to shut up. So I came on the board. You know, Mark was already there, and we knew each other from our community health days, and it was a welcome sight. And you know, and so the board is there, and Janessa came on the board. We've got 2 new board members, very good. And we have an annual retreat. I don't know if you know Dr. Whitney Cassidy K. Wood. She's on the board, and she started an annual retreat day for the board. And we're doing it every year, and it's where we get to sit and hash over a lot of stuff. And it's been great for the board, and it was something never done before. So
It
what
makes us
I'm
work
saying
12 hours that day.
Yeah.
No extra pay or
No,
thank
yeah.
you or anything.
You don't get paid for the job.
I mean,
It's all volunteer. It's,
You're
you know,
he says, well, good job, y'all.
Yeah.
That's what we get from him. I just need y'all to know that.
Yeah.
And Mark says that too. He'll be like, y'all did a good job on our Friday. That's what we get. A little pat on the back.
Yeah.
I can't even get a hug, and I'm a hugger.
It's so you know that's where the board is, and you know one of the things we talked about this last we tried to do it during March, you know, Social Work Month, and one of the things that we talked about was we as a board work together well, the staff works together well. We have a chance to change the culture of the board for the sake of the profession in this state, and we thought it was high time we did it. So that was the decision that we did, and that's what we were carrying forward. Now, giving out the paperwork and stuff like that, we probably weren't perfect at doing that, probably created some hassles for you guys that we shouldn't have, but, you know, hey, you know, sorry, we're not perfect yet. We're still learning how to do processes because it's new for us. Now there's nothing that gives us a guide point of how to do this. So I just really thank you all for being here, all the questions and everything you have for us.